Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Well, today we want to talk about a new distro. A number of people have been talking about it, and I want to give you my general perspectives. Of course, this is BlendOS, the Swiss Army Linux distribution, or some say the one distro to end all distro hopping, or some people will say it's the best distro ever, or the one distro to rule them all. You know, you see a lot of those types of words out there, but I want to go ahead and give you guys, as usual, an honest perspective from the distribution. So the first thing we'll say about the distribution is this is one of the ones that was on that list of ones. If you remember a few months ago when I did the video talking about how Linux distros just aren't working that well. Well, this is one of those distros I was trying to do one of the distro reviews of, and it was like it wouldn't install anywhere. It was doing a lot of weird things. It has a weird custom installer, and the custom installer was trying to install the entire system in the master boot record, which consequently is only a couple megabytes. And so it was, of course, would fail, and there's no manual partition setups and things like that. And I actually joined their Discord server just to see if there's any perspective over there. And a lot of people were saying the same issues. Some people were saying, well, it's the Plasma version, try the Gnome version. Some were saying it's the Gnome version, try the Plasma version. Basically, it couldn't get that version to work. But it has since gone through a few more updates since then, and now the new version is actually able to be installed. Although I think I failed to get it installed on VirtualBox, but it did install well on Gnome boxes, which is probably a better place for it because Gnome boxes does a better job of sharing unused system resources simultaneously with the distro rather than VirtualBox, which you set very specific limits there too. And so we're going to have a look at BlendOS. First, we'll have a look over at their website and see what they do. This thing here actually, just on the small size of my screen, it's doing all that weird craziness. On a full screen, it actually looks a little bit better. It doesn't like the mobile responsive. But anyway, you can try it. You can learn more. You can join the Discord server. And over here, it argues to be, and as many people have mentioned, it is a Linux distribution that can run pretty much every major form of Linux distribution, including Android apps on top of it, very well. Now, when I did the Android apps looking at the Waydroid application, I had to do that on real hardware. I could not get it working inside of virtualization. This actually does work on the virtualization. And I think the reason is this bypasses virtualization and actually executes the virtual code directly on the core of the system. Of course, since I'm running through Gnome boxes, there's a little bit of interplay there. So overall, though, the system does respond fairly well, being that we are inside of a virtualization setting and not just directly installed. But this is an interesting and compelling distribution. It's certainly not one to look at and go, that's garbage. It's not. It is amazing. It really is amazing. However, there are a few issues. Even some of the reviewers, I watched a few other reviewers, and there were some people were having a few issues with it. And the other thing we have to remember is that before we declare that this is the one distro to end all distro hopping, first and foremost, it is not a distro for a new user. You have to use the terminal to use the system as it's really designed to be used. So that's the first thing we have to keep in mind. The second thing we have to keep in mind is it is very new. It is a lot of the new technology. It is one of these immutable Linux distributions, which means that it does have a lot of compelling reasons to look at it. And the fact that you can run multiple different Linux distributions with inside of it, that in and of itself is a deeply compelling thing as well. And so that is really nice, but because it's so new, it's using immutable technologies, it's containering things a little bit differently, there are still a lot of bugs. So I would still consider this as more of a development rather than a ready for prime time. So we'll go ahead and see. Now, what they say is you can run Android apps, you can run a variety of Linux containers and apps inside of those, you can run Deb packages, RPM packages. That's the part I haven't tested yet, but I just downloaded a few, so we'll try them as I record the video. You have apps, millions of them. Now, under the core, there's no way, since it's an immutable system, to install apps in the typical way. So there's a few ways you do that. The first is the software store is already set up for Flatpak. So anything inside of FlatHub you already have. The second factor you have to look at is the containerization, which allows you to install a lot of different applications. So we'll have a look at how that looks. We have gaming, we have productivity, the always up to date system. So it will do everything in the background. Apparently it will do an atomic operating system. Basically, I'm not sure exactly if it's doing like the dual system like NixOS is doing, or if it's installing itself on a separate partition and swapping the partitions. There's a couple different ways of doing the immutability. But as far as it works, the system itself, it's never really going to be prompting you for updates. It's going to update stuff in the background. Now, you might love that. You might hate that. I'm not a huge fan of that, but we'll see. I mean, things are getting a little bit better. I mean, I'm still suffering from some of the woes of updating my Endeavor OS the other day, but we'll get there. We'll get there. It's okay. It's okay. At least it's not Windows, right? So you can run a variety of different systems and different package managers. And what you're going to do is it's going to give you the ability to install software from a variety of different repos. So it says here, just run system install package in a terminal, where package is the name of the package in the Arch repository. Now, if you try and use like Pacman, it's going to tell you that it's immutable. And I think that that's doing a separate containerization, but we're going to focus on the other ways as well. There are configuration files, so you can actually export the configuration file of your system and deploy this on an install. And then we have a few other options as well, including different desktop environments. We're going to be playing around with the Gnome version. There's also Plasma, XFCE. I'm not sure. I guess Cinnamon is in the list now. Deepen, that would be new. That might be actually new from when I downloaded it next. But as you see, though, this is a very fast moving distribution. So that's one of the things to keep in mind. I do really like when you go over to the download, they do give you this warning, don't download the ISOs anywhere else. These are the official links. Here's your Gnome, Plasma. They have Cinnamon. Ooh, I don't know. I might have to try this out on Cinnamon. I'm wondering if I have a slightly older version at this point in time, because I don't remember that being an option. XFC, LXQT, Mate, and Deepen. So there you go. You have some Deepen options as well. We have SourceForge. We have, is it Shallister? I don't know. These two are one in Canada, one in Germany, global, and we also have a BitTorrent. So you can actually grab a variety of different distros, different desktop environments, we should say. And it's giving us a little bit of information about using Etcher to go ahead and install. I do also like that they give us the direct links to install and flash with these, because that is Etcher. Just a warning, Etcher is one of the softwares involved in the malware campaigns where people are buying out ads promoting Etcher, and you click on the ad link and it takes you to a malicious site. So if you're downloading something like Etcher or Rufus or something, really make sure that you're going to the right spot. So having a variety of desktop environments now, I think when I first tried to download it, there was only your Gnome and your Plasma. And that was only a few months ago. So this is very, very actively developed right now. And so that is really the good sign that we're seeing that level of development. So with that, let's go ahead and have a look at what our distro is going to look like. So again, we are in Gnome boxes, and we are running this in the Gnome system here. First thing, let's go ahead and have a look at our system settings. And we'll pull this up and have a look at our about system. And here you can see our basic hardware model, our memory. Looks like I've given it 6 gigs of RAM. I thought I gave it more, but okay. Here's your processor. Oh, it's the fact that this can use all of the cores. Yes, I did limit the RAM to 6, but I did allow it to access all the cores. Disk capacity. Hopefully we're not running out of disk, because I've installed a number of containers just to poke around with this guy here. Gnome version 44, running Kalen virtualization through KVM. We're running Linux kernel 639 Zen. And let's click the software button and see what that goes with. So that says it's all up to date. So that is good to know. So, and I didn't push any updates. I installed this a few weeks ago, and just to play around with it in preparation of doing a video. And I have never gone in here to do a full system install. So that is that. Now we're going to go ahead and first have a look at let's just go into the terminal, because according to that system there, it just says if you just do an install a package name, or I think it's system install, right? That's kind of what the documentation happened to say. Enter our password, missing file, operation, and operand. Okay, let's do sudo system install htop. And then this tends to lock the system. So I've actually given this several minutes to try, and it's basically stuck here. And a lot of the reason is because this is an immutable system. So it's not going to really let us out of here. So I'm going to go ahead and just close this guy here, and then we'll open the terminal back up. And we're going to do let's do sudo pacman -s htop. So this is actually the better way you'd run this, and you'll notice that unable to lock database, could not lock database. You might say that, well, that's because you just canceled an attempt to install something. That is not the case. If this is the very first time you've ever tried that, it's going to give you the exact same message because it is an immutable system. But watch this. Sudo apt install htop. Look at this. We actually have htop installing through apt. Now, the reason this is installing it, let's see, the reason that this is installing it, oh, hold on. Why did it not install? All right, so now it's installing your htop. So you'll notice that, htop command not found. Very interesting. Well, let me explain to you why that happened to work and how to actually access this. And this happens to do with how your entire system is working. So inside of your system tools, you will have an application for BlendOS settings. This is where you set up your Linux containers and whatnot. So I actually have two Linux containers set up. One of those is Ubuntu and one of those is Rocky. I can choose from a number of different Linux distributions, and this list is constantly growing. I can do an Arch, Alma, Crystal, Debian, Fedora, Kali, Nero Debian, Bookworm, of course, we already did Rocky, and I have two different versions of Ubuntu, 22.04 and 23.04. And then I just go ahead and give it a container name and set this up. Now, once I do that, I would otherwise have to boot into the container over here. So now that I'm actually in this container, now you'll see the htop works because we were inside of the Ubuntu container right here. Likewise, I can come over here and I'm in the Rocky Linux container. I did not install htop over here, so you'll see htop is not found. But I can do a sudo dnf install htop if I were so inclined. And let's go ahead and download this extra package. And then once this guy here gets set up, now I can run htop from here. All right, so this is because we're running two different Linux under two different kernels. But if you happen to use associations, you can set a binary to a container so you can use it without any form of suffix. So anytime I use apt, it immediately goes through the Ubuntu container. Anytime I use DNF, it immediately goes through Rocky. So if I come over here and type htop and Ubuntu, and I add this, now this is going to add htop into our terminal. So if I go ahead into my terminal window here, and now I just type htop, now it gives us htop, which is running through Ubuntu. So that is how this system is going to work. So it works out pretty well in this case, in which case what you're doing is you're setting up a series of consoles down here, and then you can pipe certain applications through this. So we'll go ahead and minimize that one for now. And what we're going to do next is let's just have a brief look at the menus here. Because inside of our menus, I've installed a few applications to test. So here's Thunderbird, and you can see that Thunderbird is installed under Ubuntu. So this is whatever version is inside that Ubuntu container at the time of its install. And we can see that it's still we can see that it's still the sane version of it. If I can actually get to it, there you go. So there's Thunderbird 102. So there is your Thunderbird. But we also, if we wanted to pull up and look at Bluefish Editor, this is Bluefish Editor, and this is installed under our Rocky Linux. So if you wanted to have a couple different versions, or you wanted to have a version on Ubuntu and a version on Rocky, I can do them all and run each of those through our repositories. But that's not all, as Mr. Popeo would say. You can also run Android apps. So it's just a quick button to install the Android virtualization system, and then we have options to install either the Aurora store or the F-Droid store. Of course, I installed the F-Droid store, and so if you open up the F-Droid store, for example, we have an Android phone here, and this is the Android like the F-Droid store. So if you wanted to test out if some application worked, you can go ahead and do this. So for example, I'm going to be working on a video here on podcasting stuff. So if I go ahead and do that, now what I have is, close that up. Now I have a list of various applications available on F-Droid that are dealing with podcasting. So this is a good way that I can test out Android applications, and all of the Android applications are actually going to install themselves on one specific spot. So some of these are the built-in default lineage applications. The one application I did install just for testing purposes was the And Bible. This is the application that I use on my particular system on my phone. And this guy here allows me to download a variety of different distributions and books and things like that, and that allows me to get a chance to research different things from the Bible study, including hovering over, well, clicking on it actually on this one, and I can actually get the Greek word here, the literal pronunciation, the Greek naming, and what it actually means. So that's actually really nice stuff that we can manage everything here on our phone, just like this. So you can test out if you want to see how an Android app might work before actually installing it on your device. You can go ahead and test it out from inside of here. And I'm just doing that by opening up the container for the Android apps. I did notice, speaking of bugs, I did notice when I opened up the system settings, it launched, when I did it the first time, it launched up a system settings system that I actually could not close. I had to reboot the system to get it out. It was basically launching, I think it's Trebuchet is the default app launcher on Android. It was launching that down the bottom of the screen, and I couldn't actually get rid of it, which is kind of funny. But you can see here, as long as you're comfortable with the terminal and you can go through into your BlendOS settings and you can set up your containers any way that you want to run a variety of different Linux distributions. You can pipe specific associations through certain containers, so you actually have the ability to do that very easily. The other thing I'm going to point out here is there is a software store, but the only software repositories set up in here are Flatpak. So anything that is available in FlatHub is installed over here. So if you are wanting to install something that's available as a Flatpak, you can go ahead and manage those right here in the software store. All the other applications you can manage from inside of their particular containers. And of course, like anything else, you can, put containers, put applications down here on the panel if you are so inclined to do that. I am not sure why the icons are not looking right. So obviously the Thunderbird icon, that's something I installed, and that icon is not exactly looking so hot. FileZilla icon fails to find. Bluefish icon fails to find. So I'm not sure what's up with those. That seems to be one of the current system bugs. Of course, I could probably go in there and make some edit to the system. No details for that one. I'd probably have to edit the desktop configuration files manually, which are going to be, if I remember off the top of my head, I think those are going to be under BlendOS and under, I don't remember. You guys probably know exactly where they are off the top of your head. I think it's var. No. Okay, I forget exactly where they are off the top of my head. That's one of those things I probably should have checked in before I started here. There we are. User share. There we go. User share applications. So what you'd want to do here is get into your user shared applications and find your app here. So let's see. I'm trying to see if I can find FileZilla. So it's not even producing a desktop icon. Maybe it's under my user folder too. That's another possibility. So there are still a few system bugs. This isn't the one distro that's going to destroy everything. It doesn't end distro hopping forever. It's not the superior distro. But for the more advanced Linux user that wants to do more testing or see what versions of applications are available on different distributions, and you're comfortable enough with the terminal to install things, you can go ahead and set this up and run some piping through. So of course, anytime I do a sudo DNF, that's going to be running everything through that Rocky Linux container. Anytime I do like a sudo apt, it's going to run it through our Ubuntu container. There is one more thing I wanted to try out though. It says that it will install Debs and RPMs out of the box. I want to go ahead and give that a try. So I went ahead and downloaded a couple Debs and an RPM. So we're just going to go ahead and double click on this, and this just boots up a Debian package installer. So I don't know what's going to happen if I try and install this under Debian because I don't have a container for it. I think my Ubuntu is 2304, so let's just go ahead and do that. And oh, nope, I think my container was 2204. So this is actually the screen that you get when you're creating a brand new container. So it looks like it is going to be creating the container directly from the system. This screen here will take between 3 to 5 minutes. What it's doing is it's downloading some things and it's merging some stuff in and creating the container. So it looks like it is installing the Deb package, but it looks like it is installing it through creating a new container, possibly. We'll check into that. So we'll come back when this is done doing its thing, because the system, while it's doing these container creation, does get very slow, laggy, and almost unusable. So we're going to wait until this guy comes back, and we're going to see if that was Zoom, I think. So we'll see if Zoom works, and we'll test out the RPM. So it's done merging the container. Now it's just downloading everything related to the Deb package, and you can see that this is the standard operating procedure for installing a Deb once you get to this point here. Okay, so the installation was installed successfully, and so there's that. Let's go ahead and have a look, see if it's in our menu. So there is our Zoom on an Ubuntu. So it did say that if you notice there, when we booted that up here, see that it says Ubuntu 2304, which is different from my container. Oops, hold on, I picked the wrong group. Different from my container that, did I pick the wrong group again? Interesting. I'm looking for the Thunderbird. Okay, you'll notice down there that Thunderbird there says the container Ubuntu. And so that is a different container. So let's go ahead and, did that actually boot up? I know Zoom is always a really slow application to load. So we'll go ahead and let that have its sweet time loading, see what it does. And we'll pull up our BlendOS settings. And if I'm correct, we should actually see another container in here. So there you go. So rather than using the Ubuntu container we already had, it just created a brand new container just specifically to hold Zoom in. So that's what we got. And again, it's still not loading yet, but I have actually encountered that in the past with Zoom where it tends to do weird stuff. It tends to take a long time to boot. So I don't know if that's completely... we might blame the slow loading time on the application itself. Let's go ahead and see what happens when we try an RPM. So now it says RPM, and it's giving us an option between Rocky Linux, Alma, and Fedora. And let's see, it'd be nice if I could install it directly into the container. Of course, I probably could if I went into the container and then I navigated to this and I ran the installer for the RPM inside the container itself. But if you just double click it on the operating system, at the very least, we have a new container that is being created. So it will work out of the box. I hope. We'll see if we have better luck booting up Skype than we had booting up Zoom. So it did give me a transaction failed, but it was the same Flatpak error that I saw in the past. Now we'll notice that my my Zoom is now gone, and we'll see if we can track it down. And that's been replaced over by the Rocky. Let's go ahead and click on that though, because I think what is failing is actually a Flatpak, which is the same thing that failed when I tried to install something in Rocky Linux earlier, and it actually failed, but everything did appear right. I think it's a package conflict with everything, the fact that Flatpak is already set up on the main system. I'm going to go ahead and log out and log back in and see if that will get us some sanity back in our containers. So if we happen to have two packages, an RPM and a Deb that alleged to install but maybe did and maybe didn't, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I don't know if it pushed an update in the background, if it's trying to merge something else. I have no earthly idea. The last thing I expected is that the system would not log in after just a log out. So, okay, so it says there's two other users logged in. Very interesting. I don't want to power down. I want to restart the system. There you go. Let's restart. Yeah, restart. Let's see if restarting the system will fix whatever is going on over there. There seems to be some form of conflict. Like I said, BlendOS, it's not this amazing distro killer, this perfect new distro that a lot of people are saying it is, possibly for, you know, possibly clickbaity or to show all sorts of amazing stuff. It's not bad. I try and point out the truthfulness on this channel because the last thing I want to have happen is that I do a video, everything looks great and perfect, and then you encounter a bug, and then you're like, I don't know, this thing whole sucks. I don't know what to do with it. Look at that. We have Bluefish editor icon showed up. FileZilla icon showed up. Zoom didn't, and Skype didn't show up. We had an application. So what might be happening is as you're shutting it down and restarting it, it might be jumping back and forth between the containerization. That is a very distinct possibility. So over here, at least we have an icon up here in the corner indicating that Skype is attempting to load. Zoom, I don't know what it's doing. And then part of me wonders, there are some of these containerized systems that if you don't play the container, it won't start. I don't think that's necessarily the case because, you know, obviously FileZilla is in a container as well. And, well, that's always started for me in the past. Is other things not starting now? Oh, there we go. We got FileZilla started. Okay, so FileZilla starts. That's in a container. But what's not happening is the Skype is not starting, and the Zoom does not appear to be starting either. So that is certainly a concern. Let me see if I can come up with an idea to possibly fix that. So we'll have, it's loading the list of containers here. You'll find it here in a second. Okay, so let's go ahead and start the kernel for Rocky Linux. This is the one. Now, to be clear, this Rocky Linux with the dash in it, this is the one that apparently Skype installed through. This one without the dashes and the capitals is my one that I was working with. So let's see what happens if we try and type Skype. Command not found. Okay, that's interesting. Let's boot up this guy and see what happens if we type Zoom. Zoom launcher started. Something went wrong while running Zoom with an exit code. So both of the Deb and the RPM, despite the Deb did tell me it successfully installed. The RPM actually told me it failed the install, but I was not confident if it was a true failure because my main Rocky Linux container did the same thing when I installed Bluefish editor and FileZilla, but everything was fine there. I don't remember off the top of my head the commands to run an RPM in the terminal itself. So that is yet to be tried. Let's go ahead and double click this guy again. Let's see if it allows us. What would be really nice is if it allowed us to actually select a container we already had for this. Because if I click on this, it's just going to try and create another container. I don't really want it to do that. Oh, hold on. Now it says it's already installed. Okay, so it just went ahead and tried to run that install again. Let's do this, and I think we did it through that one, right? So let's see what it's doing. Installation successful. Zoom is already the latest version. Okay, so apparently, according to the system, they are both installed. However, neither one of them are actually running for us. So is that have we found the unicorn, the two applications that successfully installed that won't run? Or have we found a glitch in the matrix, especially being is that I can't even run these guys from the terminal, either from their respective containers. So that is certainly a concerning thing. In theory, they install. In practice, I'm not really getting it to work. My big question now is, how can we get printers to work with it, with the containerization? Will we have to run the application from the same container that has the drivers, or will those be shared to the network? We don't know. Those are things that we can test as well. And obviously, there's going to be a few other little bugs in the system as well. Overall, I really like BlendOS. It's definitely fun. It's a great distro for you to have in your back pocket to be working with and testing things out. I think the development cyclers are going great. They're actively developing it. They're pushing out new desktop environments. They're doing some fun, compelling things. The ease of getting Android applications working on this is absolutely phenomenal. And overall, I really like the system. A few things to be desired is getting those icons patched up right, and the containers, the RPM and the debs. While saying they're installing, they're not really installing, or something else is going wrong. And I'm not going to try and sort that out just right here on a quick review, although that might be something we play with a little bit more in the future and do a future video and say, hey, I got them working, here's how. That would be a neat thing. Is this the one distro to rule them all? No. Is this the distro that's going to end all distro hopping like we see on all the clickbait titles? No, it's not. Is it a great distro? It absolutely is. I think this is a really amazingly compelling thing, especially for people who have enough Linux experience to be comfortable with a terminal, but don't necessarily want to have to jump to all these different Linuxes just to try out all these different stuff. Linuxes should be Linux. I don't know. Anyway, BlendOS, definitely cool, absolutely worth the download. And now that I see they have even more desktop environments, it might be more worth me downloading even a few more of them, play around with a little bit. As you know, I'm not a huge fan of Gnome, so it'd be kind of neat how they do this with BlendOS, or a Deepin desktop environment, which is a really cool one, or Cinnamon, things like that. But with that, let me know your thoughts about BlendOS, the Swiss Army of Linux, and let me know your other thoughts about this in the comments down below.
Thank you for watching this video from Switched to Linux. This channel would not be possible without the backing of the program supporters scrolling on the screen now. You can be a supporter at Patreon at patreon.com/TOMM or at thinklifemedia.com. I also want to thank the open source community who creates such excellent software that makes producing this show possible. Please remember to support your software communities. Thank you, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.